Hey, friends, before you reach for that late night snack tonight, I need you to stop and watch this first. Because what I'm about to share with you is something that affects the brain health of tens of millions of Americans over 60, and almost none of them have any idea it's happening. I'm Dr. William Lee, and in my 25 years as a vascular biologist and physician, I have watched incredibly sharp, intelligent, highly functioning men and women gradually lose their mental clarity, their memory, and their cognitive independence, not because of bad genetics, not because of bad luck, but because of what they were eating in the hours before bed. Tonight's habits become tomorrow's brain. That is not a metaphor. That is biology. And today, I am going to walk you through the specific foods that, when consumed at night after the age of 60, are actively working against your brain while you sleep. Because here is what most people do not realize: sleep is not just rest. Sleep is the single most important window your brain has for clearing out toxic waste, consolidating memory, and repairing cellular damage. And certain foods eaten in those evening hours directly interfere with that process in ways that compound quietly over months and years until the damage becomes impossible to ignore. A study published in the journal Nature Communications followed over 7,900 adults between the ages of 50 and 83 and found that poor sleep quality combined with a high inflammatory diet was associated with a 30% faster rate of cognitive decline compared to adults who slept well and ate a low inflammatory diet. 30% faster. That is not a minor difference. That is the difference between a sharp, independent mind at 80 and one that is struggling. The full references are linked in the description below. And I want to be clear with you right from the start. This is not about telling you to never enjoy food again. Food is one of life's genuine pleasures, and it should stay that way. This is about timing, about chemistry, and about understanding that your body after 60 operates very differently at 9 p.m. than it did at 9 p.m. when you were 35. What your metabolism could once handle without consequence is now, quietly and consistently, creating consequences you may already be feeling without connecting them to what was on your plate the night before. Before we get into the list, I want to ask you something. Leave a comment below and tell me what your typical evening eating looks like. What do you usually eat after 7 p.m.? I read every single comment on this channel, and your answers genuinely help me understand what habits are most common among the seniors in our community and what guidance is most urgently needed. Let's count down from 5 to 1. And please stay until number 1, because that particular food is consumed by the majority of American seniors almost every single night, often as a way to wind down. And the research on what it does to the aging brain overnight is something every person over 60 deserves to know. Number 5 is processed sugar and sweetened desserts eaten after 7 p.m. Now, before you say it, yes, I know. A little something sweet after dinner feels like one of life's simple, harmless pleasures. A cookie, a small bowl of ice cream, a piece of chocolate cake, and I am not here to take joy out of your evening, but I am here to tell you what is happening inside your brain when you do that after 60, because the science is clear and it is not something you can afford to ignore. Here is the mechanism. When you consume processed sugar in the evening, your blood glucose spikes sharply. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin to bring that glucose back down. In a younger body, this cycle completes relatively efficiently and sleep is not significantly disrupted. But after the age of 60, insulin sensitivity has declined. Your cells do not respond to insulin as quickly or as effectively as they once did. The result is a prolonged period of elevated blood glucose that extends well into your sleep cycle. Why does that matter for your brain? During deep sleep, specifically during the slow wave and REM stages, your brain activates a remarkable cleaning system called the glymphatic system. Think of it as your brain's overnight maintenance crew. This system flushes out metabolic waste products, most critically a protein called amyloid beta, which is the same protein that accumulates in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. Research published in Science magazine by Dr. Macon Nedergaard at the University of Rochester found that the glymphatic system is up to 10 times more active during sleep than during waking hours. But here is the critical part. Elevated blood glucose directly impairs glymphatic function. A study from the journal JCI Insight demonstrated that high glucose levels reduce the efficiency of this brain cleaning process by disrupting the aquaporin 4 water channels that power it. So when you eat a sugary dessert at 9 p.m., you are not just having a treat. You are raising your blood glucose at exactly the moment your brain needs its cleanup crew operating at full capacity. Night after night, week after week, year after year. The consequence of that is a gradual accumulation of the very waste proteins linked to cognitive decline and dementia. After the age of 65, this risk is compounded further. Research from the Mayo Clinic found that older adults with chronically elevated post-meal glucose levels had a 35% higher rate of mild cognitive impairment compared to those with stable blood sugar. And mild cognitive impairment, as many of you may know, is often the step that precedes more serious memory loss. The practical guidance here is straightforward. If you want something sweet in the evening, time it earlier, right after your main meal, rather than 2 or 3 hours later. Pair any sweet food with protein or healthy fat, which blunts the glucose spike significantly. A small piece of dark chocolate, 70% cacao or higher, with a handful of walnuts is genuinely one of the most brain-supportive evening treats you can choose. The flavonoids in dark chocolate have been shown in research from Harvard Medical School to improve cerebral blood flow, and the omega-3 fatty acids in walnuts directly support neuronal membrane health. But processed sugar, cookies, ice cream, sweetened cereals, candy bars, any of those eaten late in the evening after 60 are actively interfering with your brain's most critical nightly maintenance work. And now you understand exactly why. Number 4 is red meat eaten as a heavy evening meal. I had a patient I'll call David, 71 years old from Dallas, Texas. David was a steak man, had been his whole life. Every evening, usually around 7 or 8 p.m., David would sit down to a generous cut of beef, sometimes with potatoes, sometimes with bread, and he genuinely believed he was doing right by his health. High protein, he told me, good for the muscles. And he was not entirely wrong about that. The problem was not the red meat itself. The problem was the timing, the portion, and what it was doing to his brain every single night while he tried to sleep. David came to me complaining of waking up multiple times throughout the night, feeling mentally foggy in the mornings, and what he described as a significant drop in his ability to focus and concentrate compared to just 2 or 3 years earlier. His wife had started commenting on it too. He was forgetting conversations, losing track of things mid-sentence. Nothing catastrophic, but a real and noticeable shift. Here is the science behind what was happening. Red meat, specifically large portions of it eaten in the evening hours, creates a significant digestive burden that directly competes with your brain's overnight restoration processes. Here is why. Digesting a large protein and fat-heavy meal requires substantial metabolic activity. Your body diverts blood flow to the digestive system, raises your core body temperature, and keeps your metabolism running at an elevated level for 3 to 5 hours after eating. All of this directly interferes with the temperature drop your body needs to initiate deep restorative sleep. Research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that high-fat, high-protein evening meals delayed the onset of slow-wave sleep by an average of 47 minutes in adults over 60. Slow-wave sleep, as I mentioned, is the stage during which your glymphatic system is most active. Delaying it by nearly an hour every night is not a minor inconvenience. It is a meaningful reduction in the amount of time your brain spends cleaning itself. But there is a second layer here specific to red meat. Red meat is rich in a compound called L-carnitine, which your gut bacteria metabolize into a substance called TMAO, trimethylamine N-oxide. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism has linked elevated TMAO levels to increased neuroinflammation and accelerated progression of white matter lesions in the brain, the kind of damage that is associated with cognitive decline and increased stroke risk. After 60, your gut microbiome becomes less diverse, which actually increases the efficiency with which certain bacteria convert L-carnitine into TMAO. So a portion of red meat that produced relatively low TMAO in your 40s may be producing significantly higher levels now. What changed for David was not giving up red meat. It was timing and portion. He shifted his larger protein meals to lunch, eating them between noon and 2 p.m. when his digestive system is operating at peak efficiency, and the metabolic activity does not interfere with sleep. In the evenings, he moved to lighter proteins, fish, eggs, legumes. Within 4 weeks, he was sleeping through the night. Within 3 months, both David and his wife noticed a clear improvement in his mental sharpness and conversational focus. If you love red meat, enjoy it, but make lunch your steak meal. Your brain will thank you every single night. Number 3 is alcohol, even just 1 or 2 drinks in the evening. And I want to handle this one carefully because I know this is personal for many people. A glass of wine with dinner, a beer while watching the game, a small nightcap before bed. These are deeply ingrained social habits for millions of Americans, and they feel harmless, even beneficial. And for years, we in the medical community contributed to that perception with talk of red wine and heart health. So I want to be honest with you about where the science actually stands today, especially as it relates to the aging brain and evening alcohol consumption. Here's the fundamental problem: alcohol suppresses REM sleep. This is not a matter of debate. It is one of the most consistently replicated findings in sleep science. Research published in the journal Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research analyzed 27 separate studies on alcohol and sleep and found that even moderate alcohol consumption, defined as 1 to 2 standard drinks, reduced REM sleep duration by an average of 24% in the first half of the night and caused significant sleep fragmentation in the second half. Now, here is why that is devastating specifically for the aging brain. REM sleep is the stage during which your brain consolidates the memories formed during the day. It is during REM sleep that your hippocampus, the brain's memory center, transfers short-term memories into long-term storage. When REM sleep is consistently cut short or fragmented, that transfer process is disrupted. Over time, this creates exactly the kind of memory gaps and recall difficulties that many people over 60 chalk up to normal aging, but they are not always the result of aging. They are sometimes, and I would argue frequently, the result of what was in the glass on the nightstand. After the age of 65, the brain is even more vulnerable to REM disruption for two reasons. First, older adults already experience a natural reduction in REM sleep duration compared to younger adults. Alcohol compresses it further, sometimes eliminating meaningful REM stages entirely on nights of heavier consumption. Second, the aging liver processes alcohol at a slower rate. Research from the National Institute on Aging indicates that after 65, alcohol metabolism slows by approximately 25% compared to middle age. This means alcohol stays in your system longer, extending its sleep disrupting effects well into the early morning hours when your most important REM cycles typically occur. There is also the neuroinflammation angle. Alcohol, even in moderate amounts, activates microglial cells, which are the immune cells of the brain. When activated repeatedly, microglia release inflammatory cytokines that damage the very neurons responsible for memory and executive function. A landmark study from Oxford University that tracked over 550 adults over 30 years found that even moderate regular alcohol consumption was associated with a threefold higher risk of right-sided hippocampal atrophy, meaning measurable shrinkage of the brain's memory center compared to abstainers. I am not telling you that you can never have a glass of wine again. I am telling you what the science says about having it regularly in the evening after 60, and I'm letting you make your own informed decision. If you do choose to drink, earlier in the day is meaningfully better than evening, and spacing out those occasions matters enormously for protecting the brain tissue you still have every reason to preserve. I want to pause here for a moment because we are halfway through this list. If this information is giving you a clearer picture of what is actually happening inside your brain during those nighttime hours, and if your own doctor has never sat down with you and explained any of this in a routine appointment, I want you to hit that like button right now. It costs you nothing, and it helps this video reach other seniors who are just as deserving of this knowledge as you are. And if you are not subscribed yet, please do that now. Every week, I create content specifically designed for men and women over 60 who are serious about protecting their cognitive health, their independence, and their quality of life. The subscribe button is right there. Join our community, because what is coming up at number 2 and number 1 are the foods I see most consistently in the evening routines of patients who come to me with accelerating cognitive decline. And one of them is something most people genuinely believe is helping their brain, not hurting it. Number 2 is refined carbohydrates eaten late at night, specifically white bread, pasta, crackers, cereal, and similar starchy processed foods. And I want you to stay with me on this one because I know what you might be thinking. A small bowl of cereal before bed, a few crackers with some cheese, maybe some leftover pasta. These feel like light, innocent choices, certainly better than a heavy meal, right? In terms of digestive burden, perhaps, but in terms of what they do to your brain chemistry overnight, refined carbohydrates eaten late in the evening are one of the most underestimated threats to cognitive health in adults over 60. And here is the science that explains exactly why. Refined carbohydrates, foods that have had their fiber and most of their nutrients stripped away during processing, are digested and absorbed into your bloodstream extremely rapidly. They cause a sharp, fast glucose spike, faster in many cases than table sugar itself. Your body responds by flooding your system with insulin. But here is where it gets particularly dangerous in the evening hours. That insulin response often overshoots, driving your blood glucose not just back to normal levels, but below them. This is called reactive hypoglycemia, and it is remarkably common in adults over 60 who eat refined carbs late at night. When your blood glucose drops too low in the middle of the night, your body triggers a stress response. It releases cortisol and adrenaline to bring glucose levels back up. Both of these are activating hormones. They are designed to wake you up and get you moving. And that is exactly what they do at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., pulling you out of your deepest, most restorative sleep at precisely the moment your glymphatic system is working hardest to clean your brain. Research from the journal Sleep Medicine found that adults over 65 who consumed high glycemic index foods within 2 hours of bedtime had a 42% higher rate of nighttime awakenings compared to those who ate low glycemic foods or nothing at all in the evening. Many of these people had no idea why they kept waking up in the night. They assumed it was just part of getting older. It was not. It was the crackers. It was the cereal. It was the toast. But the damage goes beyond disrupted sleep. Refined carbohydrates drive chronic inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain. Research published in the journal Nutrients found that diets consistently high in refined carbohydrates were associated with elevated levels of interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, two inflammatory markers that have been directly linked to accelerated hippocampal shrinkage and declining cognitive performance in older adults. After 60, your brain's natural anti-inflammatory defenses are already operating at a reduced capacity. Regularly flooding your system with inflammatory fuel in the evening is compounding a problem that is already working against you. I think of a patient I'll call Helen, 67 years old, from Columbus, Ohio. Helen was a self-described night owl who snacked in the evenings while watching television. Her go-to choices were crackers, pretzels, a bowl of cornflakes if she was particularly hungry. She came to me after her annual cognitive screening showed a measurable decline in processing speed and short-term recall compared to the prior year. She was frightened, and understandably so. When we went through her habits in detail, the evening refined carb pattern stood out immediately. We made one focused change. After 7 p.m., Helen switched to a small handful of mixed nuts, a few olives, or some sliced vegetables with hummus if she wanted something to snack on while watching TV. Within 6 weeks, she reported sleeping more deeply and waking up less frequently. At her follow-up cognitive screening 8 months later, her processing speed scores had improved and her short-term recall had stabilized. One dietary change, measurable cognitive results. If you want something in the evening, reach for foods that keep your blood glucose stable. A small amount of full-fat Greek yogurt with a few berries, a handful of walnuts or almonds, a boiled egg, sliced vegetables with a healthy dip. These choices support stable blood sugar through the night, protect your sleep architecture, and give your brain's cleanup crew the uninterrupted window it needs to do its job properly. Refined carbs after dark are quietly stealing your sleep and slowly stealing your sharpness, and now you know exactly how. And now we arrive at number one, the food that the majority of American seniors consume almost every single evening. The food that has been marketed for decades as a relaxing, even healthful choice before bed. The food that, based on what we now understand about aging brain chemistry and overnight neurological function, may be doing more damage to cognitive health in the senior population than almost any other single dietary habit. Number one is ultra-processed snack foods, specifically the combination of high sodium, artificial additives, and oxidized vegetable oils found in chips, packaged crackers, microwave popcorn with artificial flavoring, and similar evening snack foods. And I want to walk you through this carefully because this is not just about salt or just about fat or just about artificial ingredients in isolation. It is about the specific combination of these elements and what they do to the aging brain during the nighttime hours when your neurological defenses are at their most vulnerable. Let's start with sodium. Ultra-processed snack foods are extraordinarily high in sodium. A standard serving of popular potato chips contains between 150 and 200 milligrams of sodium. But research published in the journal Circulation found that the average American senior consumes 2 to 3 times the recommended daily sodium intake, with a significant portion of that coming from evening snacking. Here is why that matters enormously for your brain overnight. High sodium intake causes your body to retain water in the bloodstream, which raises blood pressure. Elevated blood pressure during sleep, when your cardiovascular system is supposed to be in a state of reduced demand, puts direct mechanical stress on the small blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrients to your brain tissue. Research from Columbia University Medical Center found that seniors with consistently elevated nighttime blood pressure had a 47% higher rate of white matter lesions compared to those with normal nighttime blood pressure readings. White matter lesions are areas of damaged brain tissue that disrupt the neural pathways responsible for processing speed, memory retrieval, and executive function. They are one of the most reliable predictors of cognitive decline in adults over 65, and a significant number of them are being driven, at least in part, by the nightly habit of reaching into a bag of chips while watching the evening news. But sodium is only the first layer of this problem. Ultra-processed snack foods are also loaded with oxidized vegetable oils, primarily corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil, which are used extensively in commercial snack food manufacturing. These oils undergo significant oxidation during the high-temperature processing involved in making chips and crackers. The oxidized lipids they contain, specifically compounds called 4-hydroxynonenal and malondialdehyde, are potent drivers of neuroinflammation. Research from the Journal of Neurochemistry found that chronic dietary exposure to oxidized lipids directly damaged the blood-brain barrier, the protective membrane that keeps harmful substances out of brain tissue in aging subjects. After 60, your blood-brain barrier is already naturally more permeable than it was in younger years. Regularly consuming foods that further compromise that barrier is like repeatedly damaging the security system that is supposed to be protecting your most critical organ. And then there are the artificial additives, flavor enhancers, artificial colors, preservatives like TBHQ and BHA that are standard ingredients in ultra-processed snack foods. Research published in the journal Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience found that several commonly used food additives disrupted mitochondrial function in neuronal cells, reducing the energy production capacity of brain cells in older adults. Your neurons are extraordinarily energy hungry. They require a constant and efficient supply of cellular energy to maintain synaptic connections, fire properly, and support the memory and cognitive functions you rely on every single day. When the mitochondria inside those neurons are operating at reduced efficiency because of repeated exposure to these compounds, the downstream effects on mental sharpness, reaction time, and memory are real and measurable. I had a patient, I'll call James, 73 years old, from Atlanta, Georgia. James had a deeply ingrained evening routine. After dinner, he would settle into his recliner, turn on the television, and work his way through a large bowl of chips or crackers, sometimes both, before bed. He had done this for years. He came to me because his daughter, who lived with him, had grown increasingly concerned about changes in his behavior. He was more irritable than usual, slower to respond in conversation, and had experienced 2 significant memory lapses in the previous month that frightened the whole family. James's blood pressure readings were elevated, his inflammatory markers were high, and an MRI showed the early presence of white matter changes in his frontal lobe, the region of the brain most closely associated with decision-making, personality, and executive function. We implemented a full evening eating overhaul. The processed snack foods were replaced entirely. In their place, James began snacking in the evenings on a small mix of walnuts, blueberries, and a piece of dark chocolate. He added a cup of chamomile tea to his evening routine, which research from phytomedicine has shown to reduce neuroinflammatory markers and support the onset of deep sleep. Within 2 months, his blood pressure had come down meaningfully. Within 4 months, his daughter called my office to tell me that the man she was seeing at the breakfast table was starting to feel like her father again. The evening snack choices you make tonight are not neutral. They are either supporting your brain's overnight restoration or they are actively working against it. Ultra-processed snack foods, chips, crackers, microwave popcorn with artificial flavoring, these are working against it in multiple simultaneous ways, through elevated nighttime blood pressure, through neuroinflammation, through blood-brain barrier disruption, and through mitochondrial damage in the neurons you are counting on to keep you sharp, present, and independent in the years ahead. Replace them, tonight if possible. A small bowl of mixed berries with a few walnuts, a slice of avocado with a little sea salt, a handful of almonds, and a square of dark chocolate. These are not sacrifices. These are upgrades, and your brain will begin responding to those upgrades faster than you might expect. So let's bring this together. 5 foods, 5 habits that are happening in kitchens and living rooms and bedrooms across America every single evening. And in each case, the person eating them has no idea that what feels like a normal, harmless way to wind down is quietly and consistently interfering with the most important neurological work their brain does all day. Processed sugar late at night disrupts your glymphatic system and prevents your brain from clearing the waste proteins linked to Alzheimer's. Heavy red meat in the evening delays deep sleep and elevates the inflammatory compounds that damage brain tissue. Evening alcohol suppresses REM sleep and shrinks the hippocampus, your brain's memory center. Refined carbohydrates before bed trigger blood sugar crashes that wake you up at 2 and 3 in the morning and rob you of your deepest restorative sleep. And ultra-processed snack foods drive up your nighttime blood pressure, compromise your blood-brain barrier, and poison the mitochondria inside your neurons with oxidized lipids and artificial additives. These are not small things. These are the building blocks of cognitive decline. And the extraordinary truth is that most of them are entirely within your control. I have watched patients in their 70s and early 80s make focused, intentional changes to their evening eating habits and experience improvements in sleep quality, mental clarity, memory, and mood within weeks, not months, weeks. Because the brain, even the aging brain, responds remarkably quickly when you stop assaulting it nightly and start supporting it instead. Your brain built everything you are, every relationship you've nurtured, every challenge you have overcome, every memory you carry of the people and places you love most. It deserves to be protected with the same level of intention and care that you would give to anything precious in your life. It is not too late. The choices you make tonight matter. The choices you make tomorrow night matter, and the night after that. Small, consistent changes in the evening hours can produce real, lasting, measurable differences in how your brain functions at 70, at 75, at 80, and beyond. If this video gave you even one habit to rethink, one swap to make starting tonight, please share it with someone you love, a partner, a friend, a sibling who is still reaching for the chip bowl every evening without knowing what it is quietly costing them. This information should be in every home, and it does not have to be a secret. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Every week, I bring you research-backed, senior-specific guidance on the food choices, lifestyle habits, and science-based strategies that protect your brain, your body, and your independence. And before you go, leave me a comment below. Tell me which of these 5 foods showed up in your own evening routine, and tell me which one you are going to change first. I read every single comment, and your responses shape the content I create for you every week. Take care of yourself tonight. You have absolutely earned it, and I will see you in the next video.